Welcome to the Watts Wellness Podcast. My name is Corey Watts.
And my name is Sanchia Watts.
Based in Perth, Western Australia, both of us have been on our own self-development journeys for many years now, which has led to this moment.
The intention behind the Watts Wellness Podcast is to help you meet yourself deeply as you navigate your own human experience.
Become present in this moment.
Take a deep belly breath.
And be open to receiving this week's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Watts Wellness Podcast. My name is Corey Watts, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, a great friend of mine. It is a high-performance coach, currently working with the West Coast Eagles. He's also my PT and good friend. It is Sean Connolly. Sean Connolly, welcome to the show.
Thanks, bud. It's actually really good to finally be here.
I know.
I remember us talking about this in its inception.
Yeah.
And now you guys are rolling, and it's really nice to be here.
Yeah, 100%. You're the one that I sort of relay some stuff to in PT sessions and different things. We have good chats online. I reckon I remember saying to you, like, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. And
You did. And we were at the Cable Machine.
Yeah,
and
Cable
you were
Machine,
thinking,
yeah.
what do you think about me doing a podcast
Yeah.
about all things wellness with my sister? And I was like, this would be cool.
Yeah. So
And then you fleshed it out, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are, 10 episodes later. Yeah, it's really exciting. So it's good to have you on, mate.
I appreciate it. It's really nice.
Ecstatic. Like always, we like to start our show off with a strength and a challenge from the week. So I'll throw it to you first. A bit of something that you've found to be strength this week. It's obviously the holiday period, so it might be something along those lines. Something that's been a bit of a challenge and something you need to overcome, I suppose.
Yeah, look, the challenges of Christmas time, especially with a small family, is trying to make it through to Christmas. And like, I love Christmas. It's one of my favorite times of the year. My wife is essentially Mrs. Claus. Yeah. So she loves it to another level, which in a roundabout way makes me the Grinch, right? Because I'm not at her level. But we have like a December 1st, the tree goes up. We have a Christmas box, which has like pajamas and like the Christmas pajamas that the whole family wears.
Do you have a set?
I do. Yeah, I have. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we all look ridiculous, like a typical sort of nuclear family postcard.
Yeah.
But it's getting through to Christmas. So the kids are loving the Advent calendar. We have this elf on a shelf that just is in different positions, and it's just sort of managing the excitement and expectations, and especially with sort of 3 full-on kids under 9. That is a challenge in and of itself. And just preparing things like getting ready for Christmas dinner and getting presents ready, and culling a bunch of old stuff that we don't have that we can take to Good Sammy's and the Salvos and that kind of jazz.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work that goes on, and 99% of it is my wife. Don't for 1 minute think that I'm playing the victim here.
Yeah.
So and I think the strength that I've had this week has been my organization and getting ready for 2024. Different from when I first started in the industry of training general public. Christmas is dead. It's a downtime. Like, everyone goes on holidays and you don't have to worry about anything. And then in Christmas time, when you're training athletes and pro athletes, everyone's home.
Yeah,
this is peak time for training and getting ready, because come March, start, middle, or end of March, it comes around real quick for athletes and sporting teams. We take Christmas Day and New Year's Day off, but then it's back to business. Like it's all systems go. So I think getting ready and reverse engineering what 2024 needs to look like, and having that organized and prepared. I think I'm gonna punch it in the mouth.
Yeah, nice one. Have you been finding there's been like a lot of athletes coming back to Perth and been reaching out, wanting to like do sessions and stuff? Has that been a busy thing? Yeah,
absolutely. That's probably one of the nicest things about being a coach is if you do a good job and you develop that good of a relationship. A lot of athletes, when they do come home, they end up going back to what they know, or back what feels comfortable, or back with what delivered results. And that's the biggest thing sort of I pride myself on is I don't care what people think about how I look or how I sound, or where I'm from, or that I'm a Celtics fan. Like that, all that is irrelevant to me. It's what are you able to do for the athlete? And its results are always more important than the hype that's around.
Yeah, definitely. Such a big thing. Yeah, huge. We're going to get into that a little bit later as well.
Absolutely.
Something I want to talk about. I always like to share my strength and challenge as well. The challenge has definitely been COVID-19. Had the COVID bug again, so my second time.
Rona got you good.
Yeah, and it did get me really good. I was pretty sick for about 6 days. Tested negative on Saturday, and then on the Sunday we had a massive sound healing event that me and Sanchia actually ran for about 120
Yeah, you had like 100
people.
plus people.
Yeah, it was huge. So that was massive, and it was pretty tough to back it up because I was just feeling absolutely knackered. But the energy and the love that was at that event was so sick. So it's probably my strength as well, actually, being able to do that and host that. It's definitely created a bit of a vision for the future of some stuff I want to do with Sanch on that. So
Because I saw a photo of all these people lying down.
yeah.
Like it looked packed.
It was packed. It was
real
actually
deal.
so crazy. And credit to Sanchia, she did so much work on the organising and the promotion and everything like that. And I sort of got to just stand up the front and hang out as well. So it was pretty cool. But awesome to be able to do that. So that was probably mine.
Yeah, good for you, buddy.
Yeah, wicked. Yeah, it was so good. So we'll get into today's episode a little bit. It is about you, my friend, and I did want to sort of start with your story, probably how you sort of ended up in the industry. There's an accent there as well, so that has to be explained, and I want to know, sort of how you've come into the space that you are today and the person that I know you today as being a really good high-performance coach.
Thanks, buddy. Look, Canadian by birth. Moved over to Australia when I was little. Grew up in Geelong and was there for 10 years. Went to school in Geelong, sort of grew up in and around the Ablett family. Like I used to play basketball against Nathan Ablett.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Was in and around that crew. And that was kind of like the AFL heyday for Geelong with, Ablett and Hawking and Brownless and all those kind of guys. And then I went to Timbertop in 2000 and I had a knee reconstruction at 15. And I decided that my rehab, I wanted to be close to home. So we were living in Perth at the time and then just never left. Like was here in Perth and went to school here and did my degree and was gonna and did my master's in exercise science. Was gonna head back to Canada to work as a strength coach, but same story: Canadian guy meets Aussie girl and gets stitched up.
Yeah, falls in love.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm the happiest I've ever been. My wife is the best person I know. She's my favorite human. But I was in my past life, before I was working in all things high performance and athletic development, I was a professional musician.
Yeah, right.
So I was playing guitar, I was gigging, I was doing all that kind of stuff, and then I just sort of started weightlifting again. I was like, oh, this is good. I like this, and then made the change in getting a Cert 3 and 4 in fitness, and I'd finished my degree in communications and decided I didn't want to go back to uni. So I did all these short courses and internships. I spent all them, and that was when I started dating my wife. We spent every dollar we didn't have on my education and learning. Went to the US to do all sorts of internships, and then came back to Australia. And I went to ECU to ask if I was eligible for the Masters of Exercise Science, even though I hadn't done an exercise science degree. So it was pretty ballsy.
Yeah.
And I remember Mike Newton, Professor Mike Newton, who's at Murdoch now, a phenomenal man. And he was talking to me about it. And I said, look, he goes, look, I don't think you're eligible. And I showed him my resume and I showed him all these things and we talked the talk. And I said, look, at the end of the day, let me sit the third year exam. Let me sit it. And if I don't pass it, then I'll pay for the third year and you'll never hear from me again. No promise. But if I pass it, you better pony up and admit me into this Master's of Exercise Science. Right. And he goes, look, we'll think about it. We'll look, and he was kind of like, okay, well, this guy's going to put his money where his mouth is. He's going to have a dip. And anyway, maybe a month or so later, I got a letter of acceptance, and I didn't have to sit the exam. And I was like, "This is cool." This was 2010. Either 2011, 2012. Somewhere in and around there, and maybe even 2010. But it was cool. And then from there, it was kind of this steamrolling of working with elite athletes. Like one started working with Greg Heyer and Matt Knight from the Wildcats, and then those guys led on to to other athletes, and I think there's, at last count, there was in and around 1,300 athletes I've worked with that are either playing professional or that are in semi-pro leagues or that are overseas. So I've had a really, really blessed career in the private sector, training elite athletes and really developing them and pushing them forward. And I think too, looking in all honesty, if there's like a shrink in the house, it was just from my love of sport, and I was despite how I look, but I was a really high level basketball player when I was younger. I played for Geelong, I played for the state team, I was selected in representative squads, like I was really good. And then my knee went, I had this big knee reconstruction, and puberty hit, and I started to grow out. And, and I don't think I was ready to give up sport. So I think this vicarious nature of living through my athletes kind of gets me really excited. And when they win, I win. When they lose, oh man, it sucks. Like, let's go back to the drawing board and let's do some more work. And, it's always, you're always riding shotgun or in the backseat with an athlete. And, and it takes a village to create an athlete.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not just me. It's, physios and sports docs and trainers. And, I'm hardly the one that's responsible for their success. I am a small cog in the machine. And the sooner most coaches are aware of that, the better things are.
Do you think that's like a big thing for like coaches to have a good understanding of relationships with athletes? And because I guess there's that thing a little bit of like, it's sort of their goal that they're trying to chase. It's important to always recognize that it's not you like throwing on like your branding, I guess, onto that. Like I think a lot of people do that in the industry in terms of they sort of get an athlete and they go like, okay, like I'm hearing you, but let's do all this because it's going to like, and they're not actually listening to like what the athlete wants.
Yeah, that's an outstanding statement. I think a lot of times if an athlete has a problem and they tell you what the problem is, like they know what it is and they have all the answers. You just need to shut up and listen to them. Like my knee hurts. Okay, cool. Like shut up and listen to them. Like they've got the answers to the problem.
Yeah.
You just have to get the right brains at the table to figure out what it is, get the right scans and whatever. But I think, and I had this conversation with another coach a couple months ago. In my office, I have 20 to 30 frame jerseys of professionals, national teams, state teams, all that kind of jazz. And for your ego, it's nice. Like you get to see their jersey in your office, or you get to show it off. It's cool. But I've never looked at it as a show-off tool. I've always looked at it as it was a photograph for me of what that was in that point in time. So that jersey is a memory for me to go, okay, I remember those countless hours of BS we had to go through. So for instance, I have an athlete that was playing in NBL 1, SBL at the time, in Geraldton. And he had come back from an Achilles tear. And we rehabbed him, and it was insufferable what we had to go through. He was driven. To his defense, he did everything. But it was such a slow process and it was hard. And if anyone's ever done an Achilles tear, it's not fun. And then anyway, he moved to another team the next season and they won the championship that season. But I don't have that jersey because that one doesn't mean as much to me as the one in Geraldton because that was the one that we did the work in that set up the next year for the championship.
Yeah.
And it was this snapshot in time of what we had to go through for him to become successful. And I suppose looking at like Australian jerseys and New Zealand jerseys and seeing what we had to go through to get that. And I remember the first message when they get selected for national selection or, when they got cut and then the work they had to do to get another follow-up and to get the call-up. To remember those moments is what those jerseys allow me to have. Like I can look at that jersey and go, yeah, cool. I remember that's a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
And it's a real blessing. It's cool. Like people go, man, you have all these wicked jerseys, but it's not for you.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
For me to remember when I'm old and gray and senile, which is not too far away, I get to go, cool. This is what I did. And also the other part is I want my kids to look at it and go, yeah, Dad was pretty good. Yeah, cool. Dad's not funny. He's going bald. He's got dad jokes to boot. But I want my kids to be proud and go, yeah, like my dad worked with that person.
Yeah.
That was where they were and they get to show it off and they get to be proud. And I suppose that's the end goal.
Yeah.
Is, making sure I can create a legacy for my kids.
I think that's such an important thing, like for the industry itself. Like, I think that's the difference between being a good PT or a good high performance coach versus being sort of an average one, is sort of that why reason behind it and what actually drives you. Like, when it's not self-motivated and it's more about the individuals that you're working with, like, I feel like that's when the results really come through. And it's why, like, I really value our relationship, because that's how it's always felt. I did want to ask you as well a little around the social media side of things and how this is sort of changing the game. In that, we often have good chats about this when we're sitting down at the bench press or whatever we're doing. But how do you think social media has started to have an impact on the industry? And do you think it's become more of a negative tool rather than a positive one?
Boy, that's a heavy one, isn't it?
Big question. Bit to unpack in that, but we've got some time.
Lots to unpack. I think social media has been phenomenal for the private sector coach to promote themselves and brand themselves. And look, I have to live on it. That's what I do to promote myself. Absolutely. But I think where we've taken this left-hand turn that I don't think we can come back from is coaches, men and women, are essentially making videos and making stuff up. I'm not going to swear because I don't want you guys to have like a
little explicit label. Yeah, it's all right. We can put one on. It's fine.
I'll be the first guy that cusses on your podcast.
Yeah, possibly.
I think we're just doing things to just be noticed, and we're starting to become coach centric instead of athlete centric.
Yeah,
and I think people just need to shut up and realize that you are in this for the athlete. The athlete is the most important person in the room. And they understand that you are a part of what they need to become successful. It's a team sport. Whether these athletes like to admit it or not, whether coaches like to admit it or not. But we're doing stuff just for views and for likes and for self-gratification instead of actually trying to add value. And sure, the production value for a lot of this stuff has gone up, and that's important. But I think to creating videos that are 15 to 30 seconds long that try to explain exercise science, and if you can do it in that time, that's a gift within itself. But I think we're cherry picking. Like, for instance, this health and wellness coach said to me that red wine is phenomenal for longevity. And I was like, well, that's not exactly true. There's a particular, like resveratrol is important, which is in the red wine, which is an antioxidant, which has been linked to longevity. And we're kind of like 2 to 3 degrees away from actually being specific about the truth. And I think that's what we need to start doing, is just being more honest.
Yeah, well, because how important is that 2 to 3 degrees off, like versus like what you explained in that example?
So if you like, and I can't believe I'm giving a math example for a guy who didn't math very well in school. Like at the very base, 2 to 3 degrees is not very much. But if you draw that line, 2 to 3 degrees ends up becoming huge. So I think we need to be more honest. I think social media is a phenomenal tool. I think sporting teams get very nervous about practitioners, like their staff being on social media and representing the brand, which is important. And I don't do it anymore because of my association with West Coast Eagles. I never did it anyway to begin with, but I'm really passionate about being a part of West Coast and want to represent them in the best possible light. And you don't want to put stuff out that reflects negatively on them. But you want to be true to yourself. But I think social media has a lot of power and a lot of influence. But I think it's the demographic that you market to is maybe far too impressionable. And I think that 2 to 3 degrees of telling the truth matters.
Yeah. Who do you think the responsibility then lies on? Like, is it on the listener being that sort of impressionable? They need to sort of realize that not everything you see is like the magic quick fast pill to success or whatever it is that you want? Or do you think it does fall back on the creators and us needing to take a step back and go, you know what, like for the sake of 10 million views, I'm not going to put out just this shitty advice that this person's now going to take away and, could affect them long term and their well-being.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, you cussed first, so the floodgates are open. Do you know, at the end of the day, I think it rests on the creator. I think you have the responsibility the person creating the content or giving out that information. It is your responsibility to make sure that it's true and accurate. However, social media is unregulated. Oh, but Instagram can ban you, and that's faux regulation. That's not quite the real deal. But there's no regulation, and thus there's no regulation in the health and fitness industry. You can say whatever you want, and until someone gets violently sick or is debilitated, then action is then taken, which is more of a legal thing. But there's no regulation, and that's the bit that bugs me. And I'm maybe a violent defender of all things strength and conditioning, and I think it's evolving and adapting, and we all need to evolve and adapt. But like strength and conditioning coaches are almost getting away with murder in terms of what they say. Everybody wants to be a strength and conditioning coach nowadays because no one wants to be a personal trainer. And like I still have general population clients.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
They're the best. So I do personal training, but my profession and my career is a strength coach. People don't want to just be a personal trainer anymore.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago, like if you were a personal trainer, you were you were in.
Yeah, that's it.
So I think people are just really nervous about what they look like, how they're perceived, and with that are doing a whole bunch of weird and wonderful things that in an unregulated industry could be negligent and dangerous. And I don't like that. That really irks me, and I think it's gonna get worse before it gets better, and it's gonna take a huge, colossal, meteor-style crash for things to change because. Unfortunately, things only change when drastic things happen.
Yeah.
And I never want that to happen because someone's going to get hurt before it happens.
Yeah, massively. I mean, how do you negate that with your athletes in terms of their, everyone these days has access to social media. I'm a massive one. I reckon the amount of times I come to you to saying like, oh, I'm looking like chubby or like just looking a bit this or that and getting in my own head, like how hard is that to navigate with your athletes? And do you have to have that sort of sense of being able to sort of snap them back in line and sort of go, you need to trust me, like have trust in what we're doing. Like don't worry about all this external stuff and comparisons and everything like that. Like, is that a big thing for you?
Huge.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome is now arguably a daily thing that I have to deal with athletes and other coaches. And social media is 100% responsible for it. Like if you take you for an example, you're in phenomenal shape. And so the tiniest little change in your shape, you'll notice. There's another athlete we know very well who is very, very, very lean, is in incredible shape. And if the slight change in them holding water or the amount of food that's in their bowel, they'll go, oh my God, I'm feeling really heavy.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I feel super bloated. And they're right because they can feel those differences. Mind you, a day of clean eating and they're back to normal and you're no different. Whereas somebody who is much more overweight, like they're not going to have the same kind of feelings of those fluctuations.
Yeah.
But that being said, God almighty, do we compare ourselves to people on social media. And social media is more often than not is such a lie. Like people, it's like speed dating. Like people just want to put on the best front and hoping that people like them or feel they're attractive. And like I'd love, and it would never take off, but I'd love to have a dating platform where you just opened up your flaws.
Yeah, just everything out in one.
Because if, and it's like with my wife, like she's seen me at my worst and still loves me. So yay, like,
that's
I'm
love.
lonely no more. So she, you have to have your warts and all out for show. And that within itself is the more authentic you are and the better you are at being able to deliver results and not only being a quality practitioner, but also being a really good communicator, you will win in the world of strength and conditioning.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because it's, I could be the most technical, well-educated cat in the room, but if I can't green eggs and ham that information for the athlete, and I'm not saying for 1 minute athletes are dumb that they can only understand green eggs and ham, but if I can't bring it down to a green eggs and ham level, then what's the point in having all this exercise science knowledge? Your ability to communicate that and water it down to being palatable and digestible, is hugely important, regardless of the fact of how smart you are. So I think coaches nowadays have to be aware that how you communicate and understanding the learning style of the athlete, as well as making sure that you're as smart as possible. Those three things are incredibly important for the success and the longevity of a strength coach.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. That's such good advice. Like, I think to be able to take that away and just even think about that if you are a strength coach, like it's massive. Do you think that's almost something these days that like you need to do if you're coming into the industry? Like if there was somebody listening to this and they're wanting to go into, high performance or PT or whatever it is, like would your advice to them be like learn how to deal with people and learn how to package stuff and learn how to form relationships first and foremost?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got to learn how to communicate. And that's not to say that introverts don't do well. And that I've heard people say that, and that's completely false. If you're an introvert, you just have to know how to communicate best with who you are and the people that you're working with. And you might communicate better with text. You might communicate better in other forms.
Yeah.
Extroverts often do better, but turning the dial down for an extrovert is much easier than an introvert turning the dial up.
Yeah, yeah.
And that, I'm generalizing, but that's more often the case from what I've seen with my experience. But experience is critical. You just have to have hours in the trench, which is probably one of my big bugbears with the strength and conditioning industry. Whereas, I've been in the game 15 years now. I've worked with thousands of athletes, consulted with teams, consulted with companies. I've got a lot of experience. And I think too, I've had the luxury, but particularly in the private sector, I've had the real luxury of working with so many athletes in an hour by hour by hour basis. So the 10,000 hours sort of cliche, I've done that 6 or 7 times over. So I know what to look for and what to do in programming and training and how to fix an athlete and that kind of jazz. What usually happens in the S&C world is it's really upsetting because most people will finish their degree, particularly here in Perth. No one takes a gap year anymore. They go straight into uni. So they're 17, they finish school, they go straight into university at 18, 19, 20. They finish their degree. They're like, man, I'm just going to keep rolling. So they go into their master's, which is 18 months. So that's 20, let's say virgin on 22. They'll go do their PhD. And then by 25, they are a doctor. And I should probably put on the record, like I'm working very hard to get everything ready to potentially start my PhD. Just because I want my wife to call me doctor, like more than anything else.
Yeah, tick that one off. Yeah.
By 25, they're a doctor. I had 5 years of working with athletes and clients. By 25, I'd probably trained, 300 people by then.
Yeah.
Whereas if a lot of these students that are professional students have come out and finished their PhD, don't have a very good understanding of how to train an athlete. They're very clever, and I'll defend them. They're very clever, but they're research based. They've looked at something very, very small and very direct, but they've never had much experience in training an athlete and in getting a result. And then you look at an awful lot of these PhDs and these guys and girls that have gone to university end up getting really well-paid, high-paying professional sporting positions, but wouldn't be able to navigate themselves out of a gym. And that being said, to defend them a little bit too, there's an awful lot of trainers and coaches that wouldn't be able to read anything but an abstract in a journal article.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think there needs to be some level of credibility that you need to have if you're going to work with a sporting team. Like you have to prove that you've been able to deliver results, not that you've just been able to critically research a specific topic. But that being said, a very, very good friend of mine, Dr. Tanya Spiteri, she's the international guru of all things agility and change of direction. And she probably wouldn't mind me saying this, is she knows weights room, but she wouldn't be able to write a program to save herself.
Yeah.
But you want to look at the biomechanics and the intricacies of how an athlete moves. to increase their speed and agility and change of direction, she's your girl. She's world leading. So I think the beauty of having not only the white lab coats, but then the meatheads, it's the meatheads that have the discovery, the idea of what should be researched. Like, for instance, I've got 7 or 8 ideas that I think are phenomenal for research. And I've checked and they haven't been critiqued or looked at in the way that they
really
should
explored,
be.
Yeah.
So I need a lab coat to help me do that. So I think there's a need for both. But if you're going to work as a strength coach in a professional sporting team, like, you can't just have collected all these polo tops in all the teams that you've worked with. You need to prove that you've been able to deliver results. And I think that's where the private sector doesn't get enough love. Because if you're in the private sector for, 15 years, like, I'm definitely not the most attractive guy in the world, but if I'm still sought after around the globe for athletes to work with me, I must be doing something right.
Yeah.
So the private sector doesn't get enough love.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of strength coaches that are in professional sport that are very lucky to be there, but there are also some phenomenal strength coaches that are in sporting teams that do great jobs.
Yeah.
So I'm not bagging anybody out. I just think there needs to be more onus on your ability to get results, which goes back to what we were talking about. You got to be able to communicate. You got to be able to know what you're talking about, creating the right programs for the right athlete. And then how can you water it down, titrate it up for, to deliver it.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I mean, it's probably not even just the PT industry or the strength and conditioning industry as a whole. Like, it's most industries are like that, that prioritize the learning and the diplomas and the pieces of paper, and often like overlook the experience. And yeah, it's interesting like how we navigate that as a whole. And I think it's probably something that we have to get better at in general, because a lot of good people miss out on things just because they haven't had the same opportunities as someone else to perhaps go and do that. So such a big thing, and something that we probably need to moving forward. I guess we've spoken a little bit around sort of the negative sides of the industry, and obviously, sort of swung into some good things. But what is it that you would like to see, sort of your philosophies and stuff? If you could paint like a perfect picture of how the industry would look, what would that be for Sean Connolly?
I would like more athletes. I'd like for athletes to be as educated as coaches. I remember my father back in the day, and like, this is a guy who had trouble in school. But my father always said that you can have everything taken away from you, but you can never have your education taken away. And that's always resonated with me. So like, the more that I've learned, the more that I've been able to earn. And a mentor of mine, Charles Poliquin, before he passed away, told me the same thing. Like, the more you earn, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you earn. And I think there needs to be more education for coaches and athletes. And I think there needs to be, particularly in today's day and age, there needs to be more education that is delivered in the way in which these athletes and coaches learn. And I didn't do well in school because it was like, here's what you need to learn, remember it, regurgitate it, and then you're marked on how good your memory is.
Yeah, amen.
And then when I changed, it was non-TE back in the day, and I did non-TE subjects, and I blitzed it. I had A pluses, I got subject prizes. I was brilliant because I was able to get my hands dirty and really digest the topic. So I suppose the way that we teach is maybe a bit flawed. So, and that's changing now, but if you can educate people with how they learn, with stuff that's relevant, we're really gonna fast track how we change the industry. And the other part is, like, we just have to get people to put a lid on their ego. Like, your shit doesn't stink. That's the way that people think, is like, I'm all great, I'm phenomenal, I'm this, that, and the other. Like, I have 30 clients, I'm making this much money. And, people just need to put their egos aside and realize that you can always get better. And it's about the long game. And I think, like we're talking about with social media, everybody sees the short game. Personal trainers really just see the short game. And the amount of personal trainers that last in the industry over 2 to 3 years, it's not good. I'd like to see some longevity in the health and fitness industry. I'd like to see better education. and I'd like to see better education at different price points as well. And it's hard with cost of living and people trying to invest in their business. But I think enhancing longevity, for coaches and athletes and be able to educate them are two things I'd like to, and I actively am trying to do that in 2024.
Yeah, and two really good points as well. I think they're massive things. I mean, we obviously spoke around the importance of education before and being educated when you're in the industry. I guess the other question I have for you as well, sort of on that, is when we talk about wellness, a lot of the time, like people say, oh, get fit, get healthy, get in the gym. Do you think that the gym space currently provides an element of wellness for people? Like, is that an area where it's going to improve wellness in the sense of like, obviously, getting in the gym and lifting weights and getting healthy is like good, but do you think the culture and stuff supports wellness in the way that it's perceived, or do you think there's some areas we can improve there as well?
Corey, that's a really good question. The short answer is wellness is massively subjective. And maybe that's a flaw. Maybe that's a really good attribute of wellness. But if Mary goes to the gym and she loves it and it makes her feel good and it can help her reduce her heart rate, she can get some level of heart rate variability and she goes home happier, who are you to say that that doesn't have some sort of positive effect on her wellness? Because it does. Do I think the gym is the be-all and end-all with wellness? Absolutely not. And I think anybody that says otherwise is probably a little bit misguided. It is a tool for increasing somebody's wellness. So is making sure you can eat the right kind of things, you have the right stuff in your kitchen, surrounding yourself with the right people, getting the right amount of sunlight, drinking enough water, putting the right kind of things into your body, getting enough sleep. Oh boy, do I need to take that advice. So I think wellness is very much the sum of all parts. Ironically, wellness is the athlete. Going to the gym is your strength coach. Eating the right foods, your nutritionist. Getting the right kind of sleep is your sports trainer. So like your wellness is the sum of all the parts that you get right. And I think going back to your question before about some of the flaws with the wellness industry, flaws in general, we're so one-sided. We're so driven by having the one secret, the one thing, like this thing, whatever it is going to change your life. And like today it's ice baths, like, oh my God, like if you have ice baths, it's going to increase, it's going to decrease fuel prices and you'll be able to find your wallet easier and you'll be able to sleep 9 hours instead of 8.5. Like it's the new go-to thing. Like, everything's, everybody's trying to push the one topic. And I think wellness is the sum of all parts. And I think too, athletes, need to embrace the non-sexy stuff. And it's the non-sexy stuff that is wellness. The sleep, getting the right kind of, like making sure that your room is completely black, like a bat cave, so you can get the right kind of sleep, and drinking enough water, taking the right kind of supplements that you need based on energy demands. Do you have any kind of issues with blood, with nutritional deficiencies, anything and everything in between? So wellness is the sum of all parts, and it's very important that you spend the rest of your life trying to tick as many boxes as you can, and making them all habitual. But then not having to post about it online. Like, I don't give a damn if you're in the ice bath for 12 years. And I am kind of interested if you can turn an ice bath from an old freezer.
Yeah,
like that's
cool.
That. Yeah. But it's everyone's trying to look for the new black, the new thing. Everyone wants to be the new pioneer.
Yeah, and I think it is such an important point that wellness is on a spectrum. We've said it a lot on this podcast before, but it is about just finding what's right with you. And yeah, you're more than welcome to share it with people. I think there's a difference between sharing and then pushing it and really trying to prove.
Absolutely.
And it comes back to probably our confidence episode. We spoke a bit about like the difference between being confident and being arrogant. And arrogance is a lot of like pushing your own agenda onto other people, whereas confidence is just being
Can
happy
be a fine
to share
line.
and, talk about it. So such a big thing.
And like wellness nowadays, and particularly now in this world of high performance sport, you're now seeing how important sports psychology is in the preparation for a game, in how you recover from a game. I'd argue that there's, like, if you're a fighter and you're in that last 3-minute round, I'd argue that sports psychology has very little to do with trying not to get punched in the face. But I think it's very much vital for when you walk into a ring, being mentally prepared for going to war. But sports psychology is huge. Understanding, nowadays with ADHD being so highly diagnosed and it not being such a bad thing anymore, like it doesn't have the same stigma as it once did, and wellness would be attached to how you now manage ADHD. How do you have to take meds? How do you learn how your brain works? And can you factor that into making sure that now the brain works right, the body works right? It's a multifaceted approach to wellness, and it's a never-ending process. So I think if people quickly realize that you don't finish wellness like you do like a video game, like you don't just beat the boss and then you go, yeah, finish the game. It's until you're 6 feet under is when wellness finishes. And it changes as you get older. Your wellness attributes or the things that you need to focus on for your own wellness change, and they adapt over time. There's no set pathway for enhanced wellness. And that's, I think people need to understand, is very fluid.
It's such a good point. It's actually a really good segue, and probably my sort of last question I have for you today. But it's a good one because we talk about like ticking things off, and life is that up and down journey, and yeah, it doesn't really stop until you are at that point where you are in your deathbed. But the question I have for you, Sean, is what do you need to do before you're on your deathbed so you don't sit there thinking, damn, like I wish I did this or I wish I did that? So what do you need to do before you die so you don't die with regret? It's a massive question.
Okay, so I think if I look at my career, I would love nothing more, and would be humbled that if people were doing keynote presentations around the world, and they would go and they would use my name or my work as a reference, that would be a real career highlight to know that other professionals or other elite presenters, keynote speakers, elite human men and women in the industry are using my work as references for further work. Like that would be wicked. And it would be really humbling, and people to go, hey, look, this is what I learned from Coach Connolly, and this is what I've been able to do with it. And if that can help them make more money or get better results or stay in the industry longer, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. I think before my time's up, I genuinely believe my goal is to make sure that I can put my kids in a better position than the truly blessed position I was put in. I was an only child. My folks worked their tail off to put me in this truly blessed, advantageous position to really kick life in the throat. And it's my responsibility now to make sure that I can do the same for my kids, and put them in a position where they can do whatever they want to do in life, but do it really, really well, and be truly happy, and put them in, and leave this place better than how I found it for them. That's truly what I want. I think the game changes when you have kids. Like I was driven to be the world's best strength coach. Now I just want to be a really good dad. Yeah. And I want to be present. And I want to be there for as many things as possible. So, dad, asked me before, like, what's your title? It's dad. It's, it's pops. Yeah. But, I want to be remembered as a really good strength coach, but I want my kids to remember me as someone who, as their dad, and I want them to be proud of me. Those are what I want to leave this world with. Yeah, so powerful, and such a big thing. And I know that you're already starting to kill some of those things, and you're a terrific dad. I've seen the evidence myself. And thanks, buddy. Yeah, you're already making waves as well in the industry. What is coming up for you at the moment? If you wanted to take a moment just to share some stuff, 2024 plans and things for you working towards those goals so you don't have those regrets. Yeah, look, particularly with the AFLW, I really want to level up what we did with the women this season. Win-loss wasn't the best, but I think what we were able to solidify with Wes Salisbury and Rebecca Yip and Alex Chin with the team that we've got there really build on creating really amazing athletes, strong, powerful women that can play some seriously good footy. And I also want to really make a huge splash in the world of professional basketball. So I've got a few ins there, but 2024 is going to be a huge year with more education, more systems and tools and resources for other coaches. I've had a really great career. I'm having a great career. And I think it's now at the time I've got enough credibility and results and credibility to back up what I'm saying, that I think it's time to give away almost all of what I have for other coaches to learn. And you know, it's not to sound like an ego bastard, but like it's lonely at the top, and I'm far from the top, but it's lonely when you are working in pro sport and there's nobody sort of sitting with you. And I want other practitioners to chill out with me. I really enjoy having people on the bus instead of just driving by yourself.
Yeah.
So I want, I want to try and rise the tide to float all boats and have more people hang out with me and do some cool things.
Yeah, so cool. No, that's awesome, man. I'm so excited to see what 2024 holds for you, because it's going to be a big one. We're going to be doing some work together as well.
Hell yeah.
Super excited for that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it'll be really good. But thanks for coming on today, mate. It's been quite a profound episode. I know that there's going to be some takeaways for people out there, and it's been awesome.
Thank you, Corey. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. This has been the What's Wellness podcast. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you all next week. See you later.